Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah. So we are moving fast. Yesterday, you people learnt about open angle glaucoma. Today, I'll be dealing with angle closure glaucoma. So to start with, the nomenclature is slightly confusing here. The latest nomenclature for this disease is called as angle closure disease. Previously, or even now, commonly it is known as primary angle closure glaucoma or narrow angle glaucoma. But the correct nomenclature would be angle closure disease. We will see why. Before that, we should know certain facts about glaucoma. Glaucoma is essentially a progressive optic neuropathy where the optic nerve, that is the optic nerve head or the optic disc, undergoes changes leading to its damage, because of which there will be irreversible blindness. So, if you look at this figure, glaucoma is essentially consisting of three important features, that is a triad of features, out of which the first and foremost is the optic disc changes. That is, the optic nerve head undergoes typical changes called as glaucomatous cupping, because of which there will be damage and atrophy to the optic nerve, leading to eventual blindness. The second feature is the visual field defects. So these visual field defects are a result of the optic nerve damage, and the visual field defects here are also very typical to glaucoma, which you have read yesterday. The visual field defects is the same, be it any kind of glaucoma, the visual field defects are the same. So eventually, even the visual field defects will finally lead to irreversible blindness. So now, how is this IOP related? Increase in IOP is the most important risk factor in glaucoma. Glaucoma is not synonymous with increased IOP, but increased IOP is the most important risk factor because, see this, this is a normal eye. If you take a glaucomatous eye where the pressure is increased, what happens is the increased IOP causes many effects on all the codes of the eye. So because of back pressure, there is compression of the optic nerve, that is mechanical compression of the optic nerve, and damage and atrophy of the optic nerve. Or it because of increased pressure, there can be ischemia. And when there is ischemia, there is decreased blood supply to the optic nerve, resulting in its damage. Or there can be certain biochemical substances released. So, all these put together, what happens is there is a continuous apoptosis, that is cell death of the ganglion cell layer of retina. So, eventually, all the ganglion cells in the retina are destroyed, and the optic nerve, because optic nerve is nothing but axons of the ganglion cell layer, so the optic nerve becomes atrophied and dead. So there is irreversible blindness. So now in glaucoma, so we have the in glaucoma we have the triad of optic disc changes, visual field defects, and raised IOP. Apart from that, we have a very important tag attached to it, that is the status of the angle of anterior chamber. So, this is what we will be concentrating on in today's class. Why is status of the angle of anterior chamber important? One is to classify whether the glaucoma is an open type or closed type. Secondly, the the structures of the angle of anterior chamber are very important, because they influence the intraocular pressure. So any change in the destruction of the structures of angle of anterior chamber will cause a change in the intraocular pressure. So we will have a quick review of the angle of anterior chamber. I have already covered this in anatomy, but we will quickly revise about it because this is the most important thing. So you all know that the angle of anterior chamber is nothing but a recess or a pocket present at the, look at my cursor, at the periphery of the anterior chamber, that is at the level of the limbus. So 360 degrees, just at the level of the limbus, the anterior chamber, there is a recess or a pocket at the periphery. So that is referred to as the angle of anterior chamber. So it is bounded posteriorly by the iris and the ciliary body, and anteriorly by the sclera and cornea. So this is the cursor where it is pointing is the place of the angle of anterior chamber. So here you should understand that the ciliary body is like an isosceles triangle. This is the base of the ciliary body. Okay. And if you take, these are the sides. So from the center of the base of the ciliary body, the iris takes its origin. So this part of the iris is called as root of the iris. So so if you take the structures from posterior to anterior, you have the root of the iris, then comes the ciliary body base. So these two bound the angle posteriorly, and anteriorly you have the sclera and the cornea, the terminal part of the cornea. So within the depths of this angle of anterior chamber, we have a loose connective tissue called as the trabecular meshwork, which consists of a lot of holes or oval stoma or stomata, which help in draining the aqueous from the eye to outside the eye. So this is an electron microscopic picture of trabecular meshwork showed in zoom. Okay, so at this level, so the angle structures, the most important structure in the angle is the trabecular meshwork. And at this same level, outside the angle, within the depths of the sclera, we have a small circular venous sinus called as the canal of Schlemm or Schlemm's canal. So this canal of Schlemm is the connection between the eye and outside. That is, your aqueous which is produced inside the eye has to reach outside into the blood. So that is through the canal of Schlemm. But canal of Schlemm is not a structure of the anterior angle of the anterior chamber. So this picture shows you the structures of angle of anterior chamber in zoom. So from posteriorly, if you take, this is the root of the iris, then comes the ciliary body base, then you have the scleral spur. This white band here is the scleral spur, and anterior to the scleral spur you have the trabecular meshwork. The trabecular meshwork is divided into two parts. The posterior part is called as the PTM or the pigmented trabecular meshwork, and this ATM or the anterior trabecular meshwork is non-pigmented. And finally you have the Schwalbe's line. Schwalbe's line is nothing but the peripheral part of the Descemet's membrane. So in effect, your angle is bound posteriorly by the iris and the ciliary body, and anteriorly by the sclera and the cornea, and within the depths are the trabecular meshwork. So now, how do we see the angle clinically? That is slightly tricky, because this is the recess, that is the angle. So your angle structures will be present somewhere here. So whether you use a torchlight or a slit lamp, all the light that is coming from the angle is not reaching the observer's eye. Instead, it is getting totally, it is undergoing total internal reflection. That's why it is not easy to see the structures of the angle of anterior chamber. So what scientists have done is they have introduced an instrument called as the gonio lens, which works on the principle of eliminating this total internal reflection and enables the observer to observe the angle. So this term is called as gonioscopy. It is nothing but the clinical technique of examining the examining the technique of angle of anterior chamber using the instrument called showing gonioscopy that's being done to a patient. These are the different types of gonio lenses which can be used. So what we have to do is we have to place the gonioscope on the cornea and then view the angle, focus on the angle and view. So for that, we have to first anesthetize the corneal surface using 4% xylocaine drops or proparacaine, any kind of surface anesthetic. Okay. So when we do so and try to examine the angle of the anterior chamber, this is how the actually in a patient the angle looks like, the angle structures. For your better understanding, I have incorporated a picture of OCT. This is the anterior segment OCT picture, optical coherence tomography, which is also very useful for examining the angle structures. So you can just compare the both. So here, this is the place for the angle of anterior chamber. So posterior most part is the ciliary body base or the ciliary body band, which corresponds to this. So this is the iris and this is the ciliary body band from where the iris has taken its origin. So anterior to that, you will have the scleral spur. The white band you are seeing is the scleral spur. Then after that comes the trabecular meshwork. This pigmented part, whatever you are seeing, is the posterior trabecular meshwork, and this non-pigmented part, thin white line, what you are seeing here, is the anterior trabecular meshwork. And the anterior most structure is this. This is the Schwalbe's line, which is nothing but the terminal part of the Descemet's membrane. So with this knowledge of your structures of angle of anterior chamber, we'll go ahead. See, when you do a gonioscope, if you are able to see all the structures, then it is called as an open angle, or at least you should be able to see the posterior trabecular meshwork, that is your pigmented trabecular meshwork, this. So till here, either this type of angle or this type of angle or this type of angle, where the trabecular meshwork is viewed in all the 360 degrees, it is termed as an open angle. When the trabecular meshwork is not seen, only the Schwalbe's line is seen or nothing is seen, then it is termed as occludable angle or closed angle. So now what is the problem with the angle being closed? Because the angle, if the angle is closed, then the aqueous cannot drain out of the eye. So that will result in increasing of the intraocular pressure. So here, before we go ahead, we need to define three terms. One is occludable angles. What is the meaning of occludable angles? See, when you do a gonioscopy, if in more than 270 degrees, that is from 180 degrees to 270 degrees of the angles is closed, that is the trabecular meshwork and the iris comes forward to oppose the trabecular meshwork. then it is called as an occludable angle. So the pigmented trabecular meshwork is not visible in 180 to 270 degrees of the angle. So if you see the entire angle in all the 360 degrees, you are not able to visualize pigmented trabecular meshwork in more than 2/3 of the angles. Then the angle is termed as occludable. Okay. So here we have, why is this not visible? Because the peripheral iris comes in contact with the trabecular meshwork. The peripheral iris comes in contact with the trabecular meshwork. That's why the angle becomes occludable. So this contact can be of two types. One is oppositional contact and another one is synechial contact. If it is an oppositional closure, there is just opposition of the peripheral iris to the trabecular meshwork. So this causes only a transient or intermittent angle closure, and also the pressure rise is not permanent. There will be intermittent rise in the intraocular pressure. But if it is a synechial closure, then there is an adhesion between the peripheral iris and the trabecular meshwork. The same picture will be seen. This is the same picture. That is, you will not be able to see the trabecular meshwork because the iris is gone and opposed to the trabecular meshwork. But in synechial closure, what happens is there are adhesions between the trabecular meshwork and the iris, because of which there is formation of peripheral anterior synechiae, which leads to a permanent closure of the angle. Now look at this. This is a picture of peripheral anterior synechiae. So this is the gonioscopic picture of one part of the angle. So if you see here and there, you are able to see the angle that is open. But in most places, what has happened is your iris has come forward and it has adhered, or it has formed adhesions to the trabecular meshwork, and hence there is a synechial closure of the angle. So such an angle cannot be by any manipulation, you cannot open because there are adhesions. Okay, so now we will quickly go to the physiology part. We all know that your aqueous humor is formed by the ciliary body, that is by the ciliary processes. So this ciliary processes secrete the aqueous humor from the blood into the posterior chamber. So in the posterior chamber, what happens to the aqueous humor? The aqueous humor bathes the lens in the entire posterior chamber. But the aqueous humor is come from the blood, so it is a dynamic thing, and it has to go back into the blood. So how does it go? It can follow two paths. One is directly from the ciliary body. It can go in this direction into the sclera, and from the scleral veins outside. So this is called as the uveoscleral outflow, which comprises of only 20% of the total outflow. But most of the aqueous that is formed, what happens is from the posterior chamber goes through the pupil into the anterior chamber and reaches the angle of the anterior chamber. So within the depths of the angle of anterior chamber, you have the trabecular meshwork. So through this sieve, the aqueous comes out and goes into the Schlemm's canal, and from the Schlemm's canal, it reaches the aqueous veins and outside into the blood. So this is how the most of the aqueous outflow occurs. So this is known as the trabecular outflow. So we have the uveoscleral outflow and the trabecular outflow. The trabecular outflow comprises 70 to 80% of the aqueous drainage. So now what happens if suppose there is any kind of resistance at this level, at the level of the pupil? or if there is any kind of resistance at the level of the trabecular meshwork, or if there is any kind of resistance at both levels. That means if there is a pupillary block and the whole aqueous is getting accumulated in the posterior chamber, so it is pushing the iris and then blocking the angle. So for all these three reasons, what will happen is there will be an increase in the IOP, this intraocular pressure. So now we come to the disease proper. What is angle closure disease? So angle closure disease comprises of a spectrum of different conditions where the peripheral iris moves forward to block the openings of the trabecular meshwork. So this results in obstruction of the aqueous outflow and results in an increase in the intraocular pressure. Coming to the epidemiology, this angle closure glaucoma or angle closure disease is more common in the Asians, and among the Asians more common in Mongoloid race and Chinese. It is also common in the Eskimos. Females are more prone for angle closure disease, and the age that is affected is usually 5th or 6th decades. And another very important thing in glaucoma is there is some kind of inheritance, genetic inheritance. So the first degree relatives are more affected. Just like in primary open angle glaucoma, even in closed angle glaucoma, there is a very high risk for the first degree relatives. Okay, now not every eye will be prone for glaucoma. There are certain ocular anatomical ocular risk factors which will be more which will pose a risk for angle closure disease. The most important is the size of the eye. So when the size of the eye is very small, like in hypermetropic eye, what happens is there is lot of crowding. So all the chambers in the eye is less. So there is a shallow anterior chamber. Also, because the anterior chamber is shallow, the anterior chamber angles are also narrow. So what happens in hypermetropic eyes is the eyeball length as such is small, but the lens is a structure which develops independently. So the size of the lens will be normal. So a normal size lens and a short eyeball causes lot of crowding. So the anterior chamber depth decreases. That is, there is a shallow anterior chamber. Also, because the iris lens is diaphragm is pushed forward, the the anterior chamber angles are also narrow. This same scenario can occur in a normal sized eye, but in those eyes where the lens iris diaphragm is placed anteriorly, or in an eye where the lens size is very large, or in an eye where the ciliary body thickness is more. So these are all the ocular anatomical risk factors for angle closure disease. Now coming to the pathogenesis. So what is it that there are so many people in the world who are hypermetropic, who have shallow anterior chambers, but everybody does not undergo the disease process. So there are certain precipitating factors which cause the which trigger the disease. Most important is the pupillary dilatation. So a mid-dilated pupil is a trigger factor for angle closure attack. So what happens is in the mid-dilated pupil position, the pupil becomes blocked. So there is a pupillary block. So this scenario can occur when the patient goes to a dim light, because the pupil becomes dilated. Like suppose when the person goes to a cinema theater or any dark room, or when there is some kind of emotional stress because of sympathetic stimulation, there will be pupillary dilatation. Fatigue, disease, or any kind of anxiety or stress will cause sympathetic stimulation and will cause pupillary dilatation. Also, pharmacological pupillary dilatation, like when you use mydriatic drugs like adrenaline or atropine, homatropine, cyclopentolate, any cycloplegic and mydriatic drugs can cause pupillary dilatation. And another important precipitating factor is prone position or semi-prone position. So when you are in a prone position, what happens is the lens iris diaphragm is pushed forward and the anterior chamber depth is reduced. So whatever it is, the most important trigger factor here is the mid-dilated position of the pupil, which leads to a pupillary block. We will see how. Because the lens is a biconvex structure and iris is a flat diaphragm, the maximum contact between the iris and the lens occurs when there is a mid-dilated position of the pupil. Okay, so because when the pupil is very much constricted also, there is very little contact between the lens and the pupil. Also, when the pupil is fully dilated also, there is very little contact between the lens and the iris. But when the pupil is in mid-dilated position, there is maximum contact between the iris and the lens. So when such a scenario occurs in an already risk risk factored eye, that means an eye which is hypermetropic, which is already having shallow anterior chamber, which is already having occludable angles. So in such a eye, when the trigger factor of mid-dilated position of the pupil occurs, what happens is there will be a pupillary block. There is opposition between the iris and the lens, because of which there is a temporary pupillary block. So then what happens, all your aqueous which is being secreted from the ciliary body is not reaching the anterior chamber. It is getting pented up in the posterior chamber. So what happens, it will push the iris diaphragm forward. So when it pushes the iris diaphragm forward, what happens? The terminal part of the iris, it goes and opposes against the trabecular meshwork which is present in the angle, and the angle becomes closed. And suddenly what happens, the whole aqueous is being pent up inside the posterior chamber. That will lead to a sudden increase in the intraocular pressure. So the whole story of your angle closure disease is this: a mid-dilated pupil triggers off an attack of raised intraocular pressure because of pupillary block and penting up of your aqueous in the posterior chamber, leading to iris bombé, which in turn leads to closing of the angle. So now we will go to the classification of your angle closure disease. Your International Glaucoma Society and International Society of Geographical and Epidemiological Ophthalmology have made this new classification for angle closure disease. It is, one is primary angle closure suspect. The next one is primary angle closure, and the third one is primary angle closure glaucoma. So first one is just a suspect, then there is a definite angle closure. The third one is primary angle closure glaucoma. So now we will see how each one differs. See here, for their classification, the scientists have taken these 5 things, criteria into consideration. So the first and the foremost is the presence of occludable angles. Occludable angles, as I told you, means iridotrabecular meshwork contact or position in more than 180 degrees. That means more than half to 2/3 of the angles, there is contact between the iris and the trabecular meshwork. So occludable angles is found in all the 3 types, that is primary angle closure suspect, primary angle closure, and primary angle closure glaucoma. Then they have taken into consideration presence of peripheral anterior synechiae and increased intraocular pressure. So when there are a lot of peripheral anterior synechiae, naturally the intraocular pressure becomes raised. So if there is these two factors along with occludable angles, then it is present in primary angle closure and primary angle closure glaucoma. But the visual field defects and the optic disc changes which are typical of glaucoma are found only in the primary angle closure glaucoma. So this is to say that primary angle closure glaucoma term has to be used only if there are the typical visual field defects and optic disc changes which are specific for glaucoma. If only intraocular pressure is raised and primary angle peripheral anterior synechiae are present, then it can be either primary angle closure or primary angle closure glaucoma. But in every stage, definitely there will be occludable angles. Previously, a clinical classification was followed. Rather, this was a clinical staging of the disease, like a latent, subacute, acute, and chronic primary angle closure glaucoma. So this has got not lot of significance nowadays because all these stages are included in those three classifications which I just mentioned. So now we will go into each of the classifications, each of the stages separately. So the first is primary angle closure suspect. At this stage, the patient is just a suspect. So the features of this are presence of occludable angles, that is iridotrabecular contact in greater than 270 degrees. That means more than 2/3 of the angles are occludable. This we have found out by doing gonioscopy. But when you have done a gonioscopy, there was occludable angles, but there were no peripheral anterior synechiae anywhere. And the intraocular pressure was normal, the optic disc was normal, visual field was normal. That means everything is normal except that on gonioscopy you found that there were occludable angles in more than 2/3 of the angle. So what is the inference of this stage? That the patient is at risk. This angle can anytime go into a synechial closure and the pressure can increase, which can lead to optic nerve and visual field changes. So at this stage, if you see the patient, what we have to do, we have to go for some kind of prophylactic treatment so that the patient does not suffer from the disease per se. So how do you find out that the person is in this primary angle closure suspect? The patient will not come to the ophthalmic clinic with any kind of symptoms. He will come for a routine. I'm sorry, I should be saying she here because the patient is a female patient most of the times. So the patient comes for a routine checkup, say presbyopia, change of glasses or anything like that. So when the patient comes and then you have done a cursory or routine examination, what you found was a shallow anterior chamber and a convex iris lens diaphragm. So when you see a shallow anterior chamber, the next thing you will do is do a gonioscopy. And when you did a gonioscopy, you found occludable angles. That means more than 2/3 of the angles, the iris was in contact with the trabecular meshwork and your posterior trabecular meshwork was not visible. Okay, so this patient is termed as primary angle closure suspect. So how do we examine the anterior chamber? So you can examine the anterior chamber by two methods. One is what you all do in the clinics, that is using a torchlight. So what we have to do is shine a torchlight from the temporal aspect. in an eye where the anterior chamber depth is normal, this light will be seen on the nasal aspect. But if the anterior chamber is shallow, that is, the lens iris diaphragm is convex like this, when you shine a torch, the shadow of this part of the iris is seen on the other part of the, that is on the nasal aspect of the anterior chamber. So this is called as eclipse sign. Okay, so presence of eclipse sign indicates a shallow anterior chamber. Other way where you confirm the presence of a shallow anterior chamber is by slit lamp examination. We do what is known as von Erichs grading. Here, what we do is take the slit lamp light to the periphery, that means to the limbus, and check the anterior chamber depth. Just like how you do oblique illumination using the torchlight, we do an oblique illumination using the slit lamp, where you will shine the light on the temporal aspect of the limbus. So then we compare the anterior chamber depth to the corneal thickness. So if the peripheral anterior chamber depth is greater than the half of corneal thickness, that means the anterior chamber is of normal depth. But if the peripheral anterior chamber depth is less than half, then it is a narrow angle. If it is less than 1/4 of corneal thickness, then it is a very, very narrow angle. So how they have correlated is, look at the gonioscopic pictures. This is the gonioscopic picture where the anterior chamber depth is more than half of the corneal thickness. So here, if you see the gonioscopic pictures, all the structures can be seen. This is the ciliary body base, this is the scleral spur, and this is the trabecular meshwork. Then if you take here where the anterior chamber depth is less than 1/4 of corneal thickness, the angles are closed. So that's how they have correlated both and said that when the anterior chamber depth is narrow or shallow, the angles are also narrow or closed. So this was about primary angle closure suspect, where there is just a suspicion of a primary angle closure. There is no presence of peripheral anterior signing. Okay, the intraocular pressure is absolutely normal. The disc and the fields are all normal. The only abnormality is a shallow anterior chamber and a narrow or occludable angles. Now we go to primary angle closure, that is PAC. In this, what happens is there is definitely occludable angles, but apart from occludable angles in greater than 270 degrees, there is also presence of peripheral anterior synechiae here and there. And because of the same reason, what happens, that there is increase in the IOP. But at this stage, there is no optic disc damage or no visual field damage. That means optic disc is normal and the visual field is normal. So where is the defect here? The defect is in the angle. The angles are occludable, and also there are presence of peripheral anterior synechiae, which is resulting in increase in the intraocular pressure. So what is the inference of this stage? This stage indicates that there is definitely there is some kind of abnormality in the angle in the form of structure and in the function. How in the structure? That there is presence of peripheral anterior synechiae. How in the function? There is increased intraocular pressure. So what are the clinical features when the patient comes to this stage? So in primary angle closure, the patient can come to you at 3 different stages. She can come in a subacute stage, acute stage, or chronic stage. So subacute, otherwise called as intermittent stage of primary angle closure, what happens is the patient comes to you with attacks here. What happens here is there are attacks of transient rise of intraocular pressure because there are a few peripheral anterior synechiae. Now and then the pressure keeps spiking. Okay, and this spike in the intraocular pressure is always precipitated by a mid dilated pupil. So the trigger factor here in any kind of angle closure attack is the mid dilated pupil, which can be caused because of physiological mydriasis, like I told you just now, or because of a prone position, or because of pharmacological mydriasis. Okay, and this here the attacks of intraocular pressure are all transient, and it is relieved by sleep, because once the patient sleeps, the pupil goes into meiosis and the pupillary block is relieved. Or the patient gets exposed to bright light, again the pupil becomes constricted and the pupillary block is relieved. So such attacks, again and again the patient can keep getting such recurrent attacks, but between the attacks the eye and the patient are absolutely normal. So now what I will do is I will give you a best clinical example, a simple clinical scenario. So what happens, this is most common in females and females with hypermetropic eyes, as I told you. So suppose such a female who is hypermetropic, has a shallow anterior chamber and also has occludable angles. Okay, such a female, what happens is if she has a fight or some kind of undergoes some kind of emotional disturbance, and she is emotionally disturbed, she goes to a dark room, lies prone on the pillow and starts crying. So there are so many factors which will trigger a mid dilated position of the pupil. So then at that point what happens, there is a physiological pupillary block and a sudden increase in the intraocular pressure. So this leads to symptoms of headache and pain and all. And then the patient, after some time, she becomes all right, or she comes out of the room and the pupillary block is relieved. So that is a clinical scenario which can happen. So coming to the symptoms, so the patient, when when she comes to the doctor, she can complain of these symptoms. One is a transient blurring of vision. She can say, now and then, whenever I go to the dark room or whenever I am emotionally disturbed, I experience blurring of vision or transient loss of vision. Or the patient can complain of colored halos. Colored halos means if they look at a light, there will be all the components, 7 components of the white light, splitting of the white light into all its 7 component colors, that can occur. This is one of the most important clinching symptoms of your angle closure attack. Apart from that, patient can have eye ache, brow ache, headache. All this will be unilateral, and but she also will say that they are all self-terminating. Once I get out of the room or once I become all right, my headache, my blurring of vision, everything becomes all right, and I am symptom free between the attacks. So the patient comes to you with all these attacks which are unilateral and which are recurrent, and between the attacks the patient is absolutely normal. So that was about primary angle closure, where there was intermittent attacks of raised intraocular pressure because of which some symptoms were experienced by the patients. So in that stage, what does it indicate? It indicates that the angle has undergone a definite damage. So because of that, you have to take care of the patient at that particular stage so that he does not go into a primary angle closure glaucoma. Okay. The next stage is acute primary angle closure. So sometimes what happens is, as the patient keeps getting recurrent attacks of subacute attacks, and and the attacks become self-terminating because the patient goes back to the bright light, or the pupil comes back to a myotic position. But if such attacks keep getting repeated very often, what happens? The number of synechiae will increase. So ultimately, at one attack, there will be a very severe rise in the intraocular pressure, and it is not self-terminating. That means the block remains permanent or for a long time. Again, here the trigger factor is the same, a mid-dilated position because of anything, physiological or pharmacological, or a prone position, anything. So a mid-dilated position of the pupil has precipitated a pupillary block, which has caused bulging of the iris, that is your iris bombay, and which in turn has caused the closing of the already occludable angle because of so many peripheral anterior synechiae. So because of this, the trabecular meshwork is totally blocked, and there is a very high increase in the intraocular pressure, say up to 60 to 70 millimeters. So the normal, which is 15, has shot up to 60 to 70. So this becomes an ocular emergency because the pressure is very, very high. What happens at this high pressure? So because the pressure is so high there, and it is so sudden, what happens is there is ischemia in the eye, which leads to all the various symptoms and signs. The symptoms are very severe pain, which is unilateral, headache and pain in the entire distribution of the trigeminal nerve. The pain is so severe that it can trigger vomiting and nausea. So the patient sometimes is taken to general clinic, casualty, because they don't realize that it is an eye problem which has triggered the nausea and vomiting. Okay, so that is it. And there is a sudden painful loss of vision. So this is a very, very, very important symptom. So there is red eye, sudden loss of vision, and there is severe pain. We will see why this happens. So because of ischemia, what happens is that whenever there is ischemia, say in heart attack also, there will be severe pain. Pain is an indication of ischemia. So the pain is because of ischemia, and red eye is because of venous congestion. So the entire conjunctival and the ciliary veins are congested and tortuous and dilated, because of which the eye looks blood red. Next, coming to the loss of vision, sudden loss of vision. Why is this due to? Again, because of ischemia, what happens is the blood supply to the cornea is suddenly stopped. Because of that, the sodium potassium pump, which is present in the corneal endothelium, is devoid of oxygen. So because of that, it is an ATP dependent pump. So this pump is responsible to keep the cornea in a dehydrated state. So only when the cornea is in dehydrated state, it will be transparent. So now, because of ischemia, the sodium potassium pump is destroyed, and the entire cornea becomes edematous and hazy, that is white. Because of that, there is sudden loss of vision. So there is sudden painful red eye with sudden loss of vision. And the patient comes to you like this: unilateral redness and hazy cornea, and this is the circumcorneal congestion and ciliary congestion. What are the other features? When you examine the eye under the slit lamp, you will see that the anterior chamber is very, very shallow. The iris is ballooned forwards and it is discolored. This is again because of ischemia. And another most important feature is your mid-dilated vertically oval fixed pupil. Here, and when you try to measure the intraocular pressure, it will be very, very high, up to 60, 70 or 80 millimeters of mercury. The angles are totally closed, and if you are able to view the optic disc will appear hyperemic and swollen. That is again because of the venous congestion. So the eye is like this: a red eye, blind eye, painful eye, and when you examine shallow anterior chamber, hazy cornea, and mid-dilated vertically oval fixed pupil. Fixed pupil means the pupil is not reacting to light. So how do we treat this angle closure attack? See, the problem is the mid-dilated pupil. So what we have to do is we have to relieve the mid-dilatation of the pupil. Then normally the pupillary block is relieved. So you have to give myotics, that is pilocarpine 2% eye drops. But the problem is here the pressure is very high and there is ischemia. So whatever drops you are putting will not be absorbed. So what you have to do is you have to actually decrease the intraocular pressure by some other means. So what we will do is we will give systemic hyperosmotic agents like IV mannitol or oral glycerin. So what these do is they increase the osmosis of the blood. So all the fluid from the vitreous is withdrawn from the vitreous. So the vitreous shrinks. So when the vitreous shrinks, the iris lens diaphragm falls back, and the anterior chamber depth also increases. At the same time, the intraocular pressure also increases. Along with IV mannitol, we also give acetazolamide, which helps in decreasing the formation of aqueous. It's a carbonic anhydrase inhibitor which decreases the formation of aqueous. So by both these two means, what we will do is we will suddenly decrease the intraocular pressure. So once the intraocular pressure becomes slightly better, which is viewed by clearing of the corneal edema, we will start putting the pilocarpine drops. So initially, once in every 10 minutes, we have to keep putting pilocarpine drops till the pupil becomes constricted and pinpoint. And after that, every 4th hourly. Along with pilocarpine, you can use other anti-glaucoma drugs. These will be discussed tomorrow. Apart from that, we give corticosteroid drops also. This is to relieve the inflammation. So the most important and immediate drug would be your IV mannitol along with glycerin and your oral acetazolamide tablets. And this is a very short acting. This won't be permanent. So at that time when the pressure has reduced, you will go for permanent, that is your pilocarpine. So this will relieve your pupillary block and bring the pressure to normal. But then the problem is this kind of a situation where the pupil comes to mid-dilated position, where the patient goes into dark room, where the patient lies in a prone position, will occur day in and day out in many of our daily activities. So each time that such a thing happens, the patient can go for a acute angle closure attack, and finally the patient can land up in the whole angle can become completely closed with peripheral anterior synechiae, and the patient can land up in total glaucoma. So to prevent that, we have to think of some permanent solution, isn't it? So the permanent solution would be is even if the pupil comes to mid-dilated position and becomes blocked, there should not be a block for the aqueous. So what we do is we just create one more hole or one more pupil, one more hole in the periphery of the iris. So what we do is beyond the mid dilated position, in somewhere in the periphery, we create one more hole or one more pupil. So even if there is a pupillary block, there will not be raised intraocular pressure there, because there won't be any iris bombay at all, because the aqueous would be draining from this hole. Okay, so how do we create that hole? Creating that hole is called as iridotomy. Creating a hole, otomy is hole. Iridotomy in the periphery of the iris. So it is called as peripheral iridotomy. So how do we do this? We need not open the eye. We can just use your laser, that is ND-YAG laser, and do a iridotomy. So this is called as peripheral laser iridotomy. So this is the definitive treatment for any stage of angle closure. So whether the patient is found in primary angle closure suspect stage or primary angle closure stage in the subacute or acute stage, the definitive treatment would be your peripheral laser iridotomy. And another very important factor what you have to remember here is that this disease is bilateral. I have been mentioning unilateral headaches, unilateral transient blurring of vision and all, because the attack is not precipitated at the same time in both eyes. But definitely if one eye has gone into a angle closure attack, definitely the other eye will also go into angle closure attack sometime or the other. So that's why you have to go for a prophylactic peripheral laser iridotomy even in the fellow eye. Now we go to the last stage, that is your primary angle closure glaucoma. So as I told you previously, here in primary angle closure glaucoma, this is otherwise called as chronic angle closure. What happens is there is a permanent rise in the intraocular pressure because of synechial closure of more than half or two-thirds of the angles. This is caused probably because of repeated subacute attacks or one acute attack which lasted for more than few hours, or slowly the angle is coming near, that is the iris is coming nearer and nearer to the trabecular meshwork, and the angle is slowly getting closed. That is called as creeping angle glaucoma. So actually this creeping angle glaucoma is the most common type of presentation in an angle closure glaucoma. Though your acute angle closure is an ocular emergency, very few patients come to you with that kind of a disease. Most patient comes to you with creeping angle glaucoma, that is your angle becomes closed, that is narrower and narrower very slowly because of slow moving of your iris towards the trabecular meshwork. So whatever it is, at this stage, what happens is there is a total synechial closure of more than two-thirds of the angle. Along with that, there is glaucomatous cupping and typical glaucomatous visual field defects, a continuous increased intraocular pressure. Also, the common feature for any angle closure is its shallow anterior chamber and your synechial closure of greater than 180 degrees of angles. That means more than half to two-thirds of angles is closed by peripheral anterior synechial. So how do we treat the patients if they arrive at this stage where there is already glaucomatous damage? So that stage will resemble your primary open angle glaucoma, because all the changes that are there in primary open angle glaucoma, your disc changes and your field changes are present even in this. The only difference would be your this. All others are same like primary open angle glaucoma. The only difference being your gonioscopy, where there is peripheral anterior synecdoche and the presence of a shallow anterior chamber. These two features will differentiate this from the primary open angle glaucoma. So at this stage, how do you treat? You have to, here again, you try a laser iridotomy along with other anti-glaucoma drugs. But if it is not responding to medical treatment, you have to go for surgical treatment of glaucoma, which will be dealt in the next class. So that is about angle closure disease. This is a slightly complicated topic. If you have any kind of doubts, you are free to ask. Otherwise, I will end the session. Anybody has any doubts?
Ma'am, if peripheral iridotomy is done, a second pupil is created, then won't light enter through that pupil and cause vision changes?
Yes. When light enters from a second pupil, what can happen? There can be diplopia, isn't it? Because light entering from 2 points, there can be diplopia. So to avoid this, what we do is the position of the peripheral iridotomy is always in the superior quadrants, and it is peripheral. So what happens when it is done in the superior quadrant? Your upper eyelid will be closing around 1 to 2 millimeters or 1 to 1.5 millimeters of the superior limbus. So we will do the iridotomy in that position so that it will not interfere with the vision. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other doubts? Nothing? Do you want me to just revise once, or shall we end? Can we end now?
Yes.
Okay, to quickly revise, I'll just tell the salient points. It is classified into 3 types: primary angle closure suspect, primary angle closure, and primary angle closure glaucoma. It's called primary angle closure glaucoma only when there is visual field defects and optic disc changes, and angle closure when there is a synechial closure. So when you see the patient at the stage of angle closure suspect, there won't be any symptoms. The only signs you will see is a shallow anterior chamber and occludable angles. You have to treat this patient by a prophylactic peripheral iridotomy. When you see the patient in angle closure stage, there is already a peripheral anterior synecdoche formation in many of the places in the angle, which results in the raised intraocular pressure. But there is no glaucomatous optic disc or visual field changes as yet. And even in this stage, what we do is we go for a peripheral iridotomy. So this stage can be a subacute, where there are recurrent attacks of raised intraocular pressure, because of which there is unilateral pain, redness, and sudden diminution of vision. But all these attacks, but when you go attack, it is not self-aborting and it is an ocular emergency. Because the patient is in severe pain and red eye, painful blind red eye, mid-dilated pupil, shallow anterior chamber, vertically oval and fixed, marked intraocular pressure rise, and optic disc hyperemia. So this is the picture where we see painful blind red eye. So again, in this stage, what we have to do is immediately reduce the intraocular pressure, followed by pilocarpine drops. And once the pupils are totally constricted, go for a permanent solution, that is your peripheral iridotomy. Always treat the fellow eye. This is very, very important. with a peripheral laser iridotomy. And finally, when it is into a chronic angle closure stage, it resembles primary open angle glaucoma, except that the angles are closed here and the anterior chamber is shallow. This stage, the treatment becomes same as primary open angle glaucoma. Okay, so we will end the session here. Thank you and see you later.